You need to make sure when people give you unsolicited advice, that you're creating your own sort of mental filter to process the information so that you can recognize where that advice is coming from and what's happening, and that often it has more to do with that person than it does to do with you.
Welcome to the Injured Athletes Club podcast, the show that helps athletes cope with sports injuries and bounce back stronger. I'm journalist Cindy Kuzma.
And I'm mental skills coach Carrie Jackson. We're sorry you're here, but we're glad you're with us.
We're back this week with Coach Carrie, who's going to use her expertise in mental performance and injury recovery to answer a question from one of you, our listeners. But before we get to that, we want to make sure you knew about an important resource.
The resource we want to share with you for this episode, you'll see once we get into the episode why this particular resource is perfect for the episode. If you are struggling with the mental and emotional aspects of injury and you feel like you need some extra support and maybe the people in your life don't quite get it the way you wish that they would, come over and join our support group. It's the Injured Athletes Club Facebook support group, and it's an incredible place of support where everybody shares the challenges they're going through, the struggles. You can ask other people questions about ways they've navigated their injuries. And we also share all of the wins along the way as well. It's incredibly supportive. It's a wonderful place where you really get to interact with other injured athletes and realize, even when I feel like I'm alone, I'm really not alone. And you're just immersed in a wonderful, supportive culture. So if you're looking for a great place to be able to get support, head to our Injured Athletes Club support group on Facebook.
Thanks for sharing that, Carrie. And thanks also to Lever Movement, who brought us this season of the Injured Athletes Club. Lever Movement is the creator of the Lever System, a portable lightweight device that attaches to a treadmill to reduce your body weight. That means less impact on your joints. That's a good thing. So you can come back from injury safely or even avoid getting hurt in the first place. You can use the Lever System at home or take it to the gym and set it up in less than 2 minutes. Use code INJURED20 to get 20% off any device at levermovement.com. Check out Lever today and take your training to the next level. And with all of that, we will get on to this week's question. This one, Carrie, comes from athlete Nicole, who asks this. The most frustrating thing is when older women in their 70s and 80s keep pestering me when I'm injured. I call them the I told you so ladies. I feel like they're giving me unsolicited advice and discouraging me from going back to lifting. Sometimes their comments hurt. One is a retired bodybuilder and a personal trainer in her 80s who had a hip replacement, and the other is just an average Joe, or Jolene, I guess, who doesn't lift weights but got a knee replacement. Please help me on how to deal with these two. I just hate it when people in general give me unsolicited advice.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I told you so, ladies. The I told you so, ladies. Yes. Oh man. So Nicole, thank you so much for submitting this question. We love getting these questions, and especially questions like this that we know other listeners are going to benefit from. It allows us, your questions, when you submit them, it allows us to address real world scenarios that occur for injured athletes. And this is definitely one of them, right? I can tell you from personal experience working with my one-on-one coaching clients that unsolicited advice is something that occurs for many people when dealing with an injury. It's like you get injured and suddenly the people in your life become experts on what they think you should do. And it can feel, and really it can feel particularly frustrating and hurtful when what you're needing in that moment is some empathy, encouragement, and support. And what you're getting is pushback. So for me, this answer, or like the answer to this question, there's a few different parts. The first part is addressing why. Like, why do people do this? Why people provide unsolicited advice when you're injured? And the second part is, why do we take that advice so personally? And then the final part is, what do I do about it? How do I deal with it when that happens? So if it's someone close to you, someone in your inner circle, it could be that the advice is coming from their own fears about your well-being. Like they don't They don't want to see you get hurt physically or emotionally. And for them, the most obvious solution is to stop doing your sport or backing off. Other times, well, and I will say, I want to add a little something to that. Like sometimes, when that happens, those fears might come. It might be that they're not, the thing that they're passionate about maybe isn't sport. And so they don't understand that connection and the meaning that it has. For them, it's just protection physically, right? So they don't understand that deeper piece. So it's not that they don't support you necessarily. It's just might be that they don't quite get it. But other times, the person giving you advice just wants to feel helpful. We don't like to see people in distress. And therefore, sometimes we will immediately offer helpful advice, quote unquote, to try and make it better. Like we want to try and fix it. So when that happens, their motive is genuine and they just don't realize the impact of their words. They also may have gone through the exact same experience as you and been in the position of navigating some of those challenges and those decisions and reflecting on how hard it was for them. And in their own reflection, think, I remember that. And I'm going to say this because now I'm on the other side and I think this will help. And they don't remember what it's like when they were on the side that you were on. So sometimes it is absolutely coming from a genuine place. Their motive is genuine. But unfortunately, people don't always know how to just hold space for someone else's emotions, and they give advice and try and fix it because they're trying to alleviate their own discomfort, or they just want you to feel better. Another reason people give unsolicited advice to injured athletes is because they are projecting their own anxiety about injury onto you. So they themselves wouldn't want to get re-injured and therefore give you advice on what they think you should do based on their own emotional response. If they've been in a similar situation, the projection, then it's a little bit different. They're still projecting, but what they're doing is they may assume that your future is going to follow their past, right? So it's going to follow what they already went through. And therefore, they have advice you need to hear, right? And that's where they become the expert. Like, oh, you need to hear this because I've been there and I know what's going to happen next, right? When that's not necessarily the case. So sometimes they're saying it because they're also trying to validate the decisions they made about their own participation in sport and needing to make their own experience mean something. So there's a lot of different reasons why people do this, why they, give unsolicited advice. And so it's important to know that it's not always, they're not always trying to do it in a deliberate way to hurt you and often aren't aware of what they're doing. And the reason we take this type of advice so personally is because sometimes it touches on our own fears, right? So when you're injured and you're already dealing with so many unknowns and so much uncertainty, when you're feeling vulnerable, what happens is that your central nervous system is going to interpret hurtful comments as a threat instead of interpreting it as an opinion. When you are trying to trust your body again and feeling concerned about re-injury and wondering if you're going to be the same athlete you were before you got injured, and then someone makes a comment about slowing down or trying a different hobby or, all the things that people say, you get frustrated and angry and offended because you're trying to protect yourself from the threat, right? So we're interpreting that as a threat instead of as an opinion. So you need to make sure when people give you unsolicited advice, that you're creating your own sort of mental filter to process the information so that you can recognize where that advice is coming from and what's happening. And that often it has more to do with that person than it does to do with you. That doesn't make it easy to go through, but understanding that is a really important part of that filter, right? So the first part of managing unsolicited advice is understanding where it's coming from and that recognition that, okay, this is probably has more to do with them and their experience and maybe their lack of communication skills, right? than it does to do with you. So you get to choose whether or not you take in that advice. That's your job, right? That's part of that filter too. So in that when you create your own mental filter to process the information through, you're asking yourself like, well, is this person projecting? Does this advice even apply to me? You have to filter their words and then decide how you want to respond. Part of knowing how to respond is asking yourself how you want to feel walking away from the interaction and letting that guide your words, right? So the next time I told you so ladies, right? The next time you see them, you want to think about, how do I want to feel after having an interaction with this particular person? And being honest with you, like, how do you, not how you want them to feel, or not feeling like, I need to make them understand, but how do you want to feel emotionally when you're in that space or when you're having that interaction, right? That's a really important part of that process. So then, once you understand how you want to feel, then you can choose like, okay, well, what does that mean I need to say in order to feel that emotion? And it can be simple. Sometimes, you get to decide how much to disclose, how much you want to share, what your response is. So you could say something as simple as, hey, I'll keep that in mind. And that's it. Right. And then either let there be silence or just, redirect, right? Kind of like you do with a toddler, right? So, hey, did you hear about such and such? Or ask them a question about their life, right? Another thing you could do is you can assume that they have the best of intentions, right? Even if their words don't match up with that, you can assume they have the best of intentions and say something like, I appreciate your concern. I am working with an outstanding medical team of experts that are helping me, and I feel confident in my approach, right? So just assume that they're coming from a great place and say, hey, I really appreciate your concern, but and you should know I have a fantastic team and I'm really excited to work with them. And I feel like we're moving in the right direction, right? So that, makes you feel grounded and in control of the interaction, maybe a little bit more, and feeling good moving forward. Or you can also, if you feel like this is going to be a continuing issue with this particular person, you might open up the conversation and say something like, I can see that you're trying to help, but your comments really feel dismissive and hurtful. Was that your intention? Right? So check it out. Well, that's what, when you say, was that your intention? First, you're going to kind of put them off a little bit where they do have to think about their words, and they do have to think like, oh, wow, what I just said, is that what I meant? Is that the emotion I wanted them to feel, right? This person. So you're kind of putting it back on them, but you're also checking it out, because sometimes we're projecting too, right? Sometimes we're assuming bad intentions on their part with their words. So by saying, by saying that, like, I can see that you're trying to help, but your comments really feel dismissive and hurtful. Was that your intention when you said that? Like, you're checking it out. And they may say like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That wasn't my intention at all. And then they may think twice about how they say it next time. But the most important piece with that, with like, now, okay, what do I do and how do I respond, is to actually plan out your response ahead of time. Because when you do that, it can help you stay grounded in the moment when it happens and not get emotionally hijacked. Right. So that's what happens when, like, you're in the moment, you get angry and frustrated. We're making assumptions about their intent, and you leave the gym or you leave that, interaction. And 3 hours later you go, dang it, that's what I should have said in the moment. Right. So plan your response ahead of time. That really helps with you being able to stay grounded in, this is how I want to feel, and this is what I want to say. And you get to decide whether or not you want to advocate for yourself in that moment, politely dismiss the comment and ignore it, or, you get to decide what you want to do in that situation. And just remember that more often than not, it has something to do with them and their own fears more than it has to do anything with you. So hopefully, Nicole, there's some good advice in there to be able to navigate your relationship and interactions with the I told you so ladies.
Oh, I love that, Coach Carrie. Thank you. And yes, I think we all have, no matter what their age or gender identity, we all have some I told you so ladies in our life.
That's
so
right.
That is widely applicable advice. And one other thing I just wanted to shout out is we have a mental drill in the book Rebound that kind of goes through an exercise called Found in Translation, where it kind of gives you a way to put into practice what Coach Carrie was talking about in terms of thinking about what people might have meant to say, or what kind of, it's almost like a way of conceptualizing that filter she was talking about, and the difference between what a person may have intended, what they said, what you hear, and how you interpret it. So check that out. It's in our book Rebound on page 135. And if you don't have our book Rebound yet, you can get a copy by going to our website, injuredathletesclub.com, and clicking on the book tab there. Or, of course, you can buy it wherever you buy books. Thanks for that question, Nicole. And don't forget, if you want a question answered on an upcoming episode of the podcast, you can email us at hello@injuredathletesclub.com, visit our Facebook page, or join our Facebook group, as Coach Carrie mentioned, also called the Injured Athletes Club. Thank you so much to Jeremy Nessel for editing the show. And also thank you to Lever Movement, our sponsor, for making it possible. Definitely click through the link we put in the show notes to learn more about the Lever system. And finally, if you're listening to the show today and you're getting something out of these episodes, would you mind rating, reviewing, or subscribing to the show? That way you never miss an episode and you also help other injured athletes find us. You can get links to everything we mentioned, how to do all that, on our website, injuredathletesclub.com. We'll see you there.